is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 391 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, we are talking about the future of digital copywriting using AI and emotional intelligence with Nick Osborne. I am so excited about this conversation with Nick. It is not your typical copywriting boring. What it really is going to be diving into is how you can take your content as a blogger and start using AI in a way in which you are collaborating with it, not cheating as many of us like to think, by adding emotional intelligence. You have to listen to this episode. There's so many gems of information in it. All right, let's dive in. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hi, Jenny. I'm fine. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. I'm so excited to have this conversation about digital copywriting using AI and emotional intelligence.
Right.
But before we kind of jump into that, will you introduce yourself and your business?
Right. My name is Nick Osborne. I've been a copywriter, and hang on to your seats, since 1979. So I've had like over 45 years. I've been through all the kind of new things like the web and social blogging and social media, and now artificial intelligence. So it's been a fun journey, and I've enjoyed every minute.
Yes. And something you shared with me in the beginning is that you actually have blogging experience as well, quite a bit. You said that you have a coffee blog. So I know a lot of people here, especially my listeners, they hear copywriter and all of a sudden their ears kind of like turn off and think, oh, he's going to talk about sales pages. That's not what we're going to talk about. So I want you to stick with us. Tell us a little bit about the coffee blog that you have, and then we'll really get into the whole digital copywriting.
Well, I say professionally, I've been a copywriter writing sales copy and content for client companies for decades. But I've always had these kind of side gigs. So as well as having my professional website, I just have these interests. So I've written a site and a blog about coffee and coffee equipment and coffee making for about 16 years now. More recently, I started another one on mushrooms and fungi. I have an inquisitive mind, and when I find something, I just keep writing. And on the coffee side, I think I have something like 1,700 pages on it now. I just keep writing stuff.
That is amazing. And my listeners are writers. They love to write content and create that. And I think they're scared off a little bit by AI. So I'm really excited about this conversation. Okay. So let's start with, what is digital copywriting? Because I think my listeners hear that and go, ugh, that sounds awful. What exactly is it?
So there's kind of copywriting and content writing. So very broadly, copywriting is sales copy. So if I'm running a sales email or a landing page or a sales page for a product or service, I'm being a copywriter. It's persuasive writing. If, on the other hand, I'm writing a blog post for my coffee website on how to make coffee with a French press or how to choose the best coffee beans, etc., then that is content. It's not persuasive. I'm not selling anything. I'm just sharing information. There may be monetization, and maybe there's advertising on the page, but it's content writing rather than copywriting.
Okay, perfect. I love that explanation of it. And I feel as bloggers, we have been hearing quite a bit that we need to make sure that we are diversifying our income with our own products and services. So understanding how to create a sales page with persuasive writing is going to be important, as well as, of course, we're already doing the content marketing. So what are the benefits of using AI in digital copywriting?
Well, I use it in copywriting, and I use it a great deal in content writing. So the thing about AI is once you get into it and get the hang of it, it just cuts the time down dramatically. You can produce copy and content in a fraction of the time that you would if you were sitting down, particularly if you sometimes find yourself looking at a blank sheet of paper and get writer's block and you think, oh my goodness, what do I do? And you go for a walk or have a cookie or make a cup of coffee. And all of a sudden the blank page is taking you an hour. With AI, it's like having the most knowledgeable assistant in the world sitting with you at your desk. You can ask it anything. You can ask it, you can brainstorm with it. You can say, hey, I write all about coffee for people who love making gourmet coffee at home. Suggest some topics I could write about. And often those topics will be stuff I've already written. So I'll go back and say, okay, cool, but show me some more obvious stuff. I mean, some non-obvious stuff, some unusual stuff. And so it'll then, and I might look at a list of 10 like non-obvious ideas it comes up with, and I'll say, okay, hey, look, there's two there that actually make sense. So I'll say, hey, for number two, write me an outline of that blog post. So it's like I'm working with a super smart intern and I'm getting them to do the research. I'm doing some brainstorming. I'm getting them to come up with topic ideas. I'm asking them to create outlines. And then sometimes I will go to the next step and say, all right, write me a first draft, write me 500 words, 600 words on that topic. And at that point, if I'm actually asking it to create the body of content or indeed, like, say, a sales page, I will actually give it much more information now. I will increase the size and information within my prompt. So I might love an email, a sales email you have written. All right. So I can very sneakily, I can copy and paste your email and I can go into ChatGPT and say, look, I'm writing about coffee, but I just love how Jenny did this in her email. So I want an email. Don't copy what Jenny did, but just have a look at the flow and structure of how she put together that email and do that. And it can do that. It can hang on to all these instructions. Or I can give it an avatar of the kind of person, the character of the person I want writing this piece. So it's not just a matter of saying, hey, write on a page, write a blog post on making coffee with a French press. I can give it an avatar of my audience. I can give it an avatar of the writer, of the character. I can show it all the stuff I've written and say, hey, write in this style, write in my style, be me when you write. So some people like get scared or push back on AI, thinking, oh, well, it's just going to be flat and boring and robotic and stuff. And it can be, but not if you kind of study a bit and you put some work into it and you really work those prompts. Finally, and I know, just interrupt me whenever you want, because I know I'm going on and on. The final layer I always put into this is emotional intelligence. So AI is actually better than most of us at most things. It's the smartest, it's the most knowledgeable partner you'll ever chat with, ever work with. But it doesn't have firsthand it doesn't have firsthand emotions. It's never walked on the beach and felt the sand between its toes. It's never eaten an ice cream. It doesn't know what brain freeze is. It doesn't know what ice cream tastes like. It's never been with friends having a beer or a coffee. So there's this whole area where it can read stuff. It can read the script of love story. It can read books about love and excitement and fear and hate and pride and whatever. But it's never really felt them. And you see this in the output. So what I advocate and what I do with all of my writing, whether it's copywriting or content writing, is I use AI the best I can. And I might encourage it to say, hey, let's be a bit more conversational here. Let's be a bit more accessible. Let's try to get a bit of emotion. Like, let's put a kind of pull some heartstrings with a story here. And it can follow along to some degree, but it can never go that last like mile or inch. And that's where I always then do that final edit where I put in some real human emotion, the nuances of emotion. And our emotions as humans are even the subtlest things, even like a small story, an anecdote we share with a friend over coffee, like very tiny little stories can move us deeply. AI can't really do that or understand that. So that's what I weave in. That's my second level. So that's why I'm always talking about AI, yes, because it's such a huge productivity booster. It really helps you generate. And as a blogger, you know that like creation of content is like at the heart of it. It can be a huge time sink. And if I get something, a page or a post that I love, I'll say, okay, write me 20 tweets or X's to support that. Write me some Facebook posts to support that. And it'll do that as well. I'm going to go back and review. I'm going to go back and edit. But I completely I use AI to the greatest degree possible because it allows me to do so much more. But I always add in that layer of emotional intelligence at the end, which makes my writing hopefully feel more human, connects with my readers at an emotional level. Because as we know, that is where the real action happens, is where you touch people.
Yes.
Where,
So
yeah,
one of the biggest takeaways I have from this conversation so far is I've never heard someone describe it as your assistant. The way that you're speaking about it is exactly that, though. I think a lot of times people have thought of it as a machine that you're just going to tell it what to do and it's going to do it. But you're really using it like an assistant, where it is that brainstorming session. You are able to get more information from it. I love the example that you gave of taking an email that someone else wrote and saying, apply it to my topic of coffee, because that's something that I have told an actual real life virtual assistant to do, to
right.
be to take that example and then turn it into something that works for my audience and the topic that I speak on. So that example was hands down, I think, one of the best that I've heard yet for someone talking about AI. Now, you also mentioned a tool. You use ChatGPT. Is that the only AI tool that you use, or do you recommend other AI tools that work well?
I use the paid version GPT-4 because it's better than the free one, which is ChatGPT. I use it most of the time because I've created something. You can do there is you can create a custom GPT. So what I've done for my writing courses is I've fed the custom GPT thousands of pages of my writing and transcripts on this topic of artificial intelligence plus emotional intelligence. So I've written and I've done interviews and like I upload all of that into basically it becomes a file, a data for that particular custom GPT. So I use that quite a lot because I want it to draw on my history of writing and talking on this topic. So that's really interesting to create a custom GPT, and it's not very hard. I will sometimes use Google's Gemini,
Okay.
which is, I'm not sure whether it's true, but I find the output there sometimes a little more conversational, a little bit more like back and forth with a real person. Maybe I don't know whether that's the model or whether it's me, but I'll sometimes turn to Gemini if I want a bit more of a, I don't know, if yeah, just kind of chatty. The other one I'll use is Claude 3, which is very strong, very powerful. The other thing I'll use, which is not in fact an AI model, but it's called, I always forget this one. Oh, I'll have to swing back to that. I use it all the time. And whenever I talk about it, I forget the name, and it's really not that difficult. Goodness me. We'll come back to that.
No worries. You are totally fine. Those are great examples of it. And I love that you're saying that you have given it your writing so that it can use it as a file to be able to go back to it. So it's not just pulling from what it's searching for on Google, but it's also pulling from your specific content. So
Right.
it can pull
Right.
your answer from that.
Like a tool like GPT-4, it doesn't really pull from directly from Google. It'll get because it's basically it has been fed every book, every website on the planet. So it actually has this huge first-hand database that it's going to. Um, but yeah, what happens when you create your custom GPT is it kind of it doesn't, I don't know whether it prioritizes, but it has a look at what you've done as well. So that it's basically it's just building on your own knowledge as well as drawing stuff in from everywhere. So when I talk about using it as an assistant, actually, probably the more accurate word is a collaborator. I collaborate with AI.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of is an important both assistant and collaborator are important because some people see AI as the enemy, as this is going to destroy my job. This has horrible robotic output. This is not good. I would never use it. My clients don't want it. So now you have this adversarial relationship with AI, which I get. I mean, all the points are valid. Maybe it will steal my job. Who knows? But so the points are valid, but what it does is it stops you from interacting now. It stops you from having that more positive mindset of, hey, let me see how well I can collaborate with these models, with these tools, because there are tremendous benefits you can get from it. in terms of productivity. And also, sometimes I write something and I'm not happy with my own writing. It just feels like there's something I'm just not like maybe I'm moving from one section to another and it doesn't feel smooth. It doesn't feel quite right. And I'll take my writing, I'll put it into GPT-4 and say, hey, I'm not really happy with this. There's something just not working for me. Can you take a look and perhaps either tell me where the problem is or rewrite it? And it will. And again, it's not always 100%, but very often it will help me get over that hump of finding out what was wrong with my own writing. So I really do use it as a collaborator, as someone sitting at the table next to me.
It's almost a mindset shift because as someone who have been a blogger since 2009, 2010, I also, when it comes to AI, had that feeling of like, oh, am I breaking the rules? Am I kind of cheating? Am I doing this? And I think I go into it being very careful that I don't feel like I'm taking too much and I'm not losing myself. But like when you're talking about it, it is a mindset shift of thinking about it as it's not necessarily a tool, it's that collaborator that's going to be able to infiltrate and help and brainstorm and give better information that is going to keep you moving forward. Because like you said, you often will sit down and have writer's block and stare at a blank page for an hour before you can actually get moving. This kind of speeds up that process and helps to keep you moving forward with that idea of where you're trying to go.
Hey there, guys. My name is Melanie from Mostly Under Control, and I am a member of Jenny's Influencer Entrepreneurs Insiders membership. I've been a part of it since 2017, and over these 6 years, I've taken full advantage of the weekly trainings that Jenny offers and the monthly group coaching. The group coaching is probably my favorite part of the membership. Jenny has taught me so many things for my business. She helped me niche down and write and teach about what I wanted so that I wouldn't burn out. In addition to what she teaches, the networking I've done with other members has been invaluable. I recommend her membership to all of my online business owner friends because it is worth every single penny.
So, will you talk a little bit more about the emotional intelligence? I love that you talked about adding in the story. And can you give more examples of how else we could get in emotional intelligence into that?
So emotional intelligence, so we have cognitive intelligence. That's the intelligence test we took at school, and it is kind of fixed. We have a number, we're labeled with a number when we're kids, and we're stuck with that number forever. Emotional intelligence, it turns out, is actually a much better indicator of how well we'll do in life, professionally and personally, with family, friends, and work colleagues. And just very, very briefly, it falls into four domains. There's self-awareness. How aware are you of your own emotions? And we think we are, but actually we're very often not aware of our immediate emotions. Self-management is like, how well do we manage our emotions? If our kids are shouting and screaming, do we lose it? Or do we control our emotions because we know that things are not going to go well if we start shouting as well? So there's self-management. Social awareness, and the big part there is empathy. In fact, there are two big things that come out of the kind of teaching of emotional intelligence. One is to listen, which as a copywriter I've always tried to do. Like, if you don't know who you're writing to, how do you know what to say? And the only way to find out who you're writing to is to listen. Listen to your audience. Listen to what they're saying, what they feel, what they love, what they hate, what makes them happy, what makes them uncomfortable. The better you understand your audience, the better you're going to communicate with them. So you have to listen. And that's part of emotional intelligence. And we know most of us are terrible listeners. If you're sitting down with friends, there's always that person who won't stop talking. It's usually me. Or the worst thing is where you're having a conversation with a colleague or a loved one, and you know that they're not really listening. They're waiting for you to stop so they can carry on and tell you what they think. So that's not listening. All right. So most of us are pretty bad listeners, but the better you are as a listener, as a writer, the better your writing will be. The other thing is empathy, which is to actually care. Well, one is to walk in the other person's shoes, to see the world through their eyes, and to respect that. So you and I might have very different views on educating our kids, like dramatically different. And we can either fight about it, or I can recognize that you have a perfectly valid viewpoint there. And now I can empathize with you. So if I now start writing to you, my writing is going to be much, much more powerful because it's not going to be adversarial. You're not going to feel, hey, Nick's just beating me up because he disagrees. If I write, if one, I've listened, and secondly, I'm empathetic to your point of view, now I can write in a way that you're going to say, hey, he doesn't agree, but I get it because he hears me. He's listening to me. He's not just talking at me. So emotional intelligence, applying the principles of emotional intelligence to copying content has always been incredibly important. It's always been part of my copywriting kind of toolbox, even before the arrival of AI. But with the arrival of I think it becomes even more important because if you don't do that, then AI output can be robotic. It can be repetitive. I talk to people sometimes about don't fall into the sameness trap. Like if two people have a blog on the same topic and they're both using ChatGPT and they're both using top 20 prompts they've read about on Facebook, it's inevitable that the output is going to be similar because they're using the same prompts with the same tools on the same topic. So all of a sudden, your blog begins to sound like your competitor's blog, and that cannot be good. You don't want to create generic text. You don't want to fall into the sameness trap. When you apply this layer of emotional intelligence at the end, then it doesn't have to be at the end, like throughout the process, then you're differentiating yourself and you're creating better copy and content that will appeal more at an emotional level to your audience. So it's super important, I think.
Yes, I could not agree more. I think this really hits home for a lot of my food bloggers that are listening because they have paid so much attention to keyword research. That's where they try to rank for their specific recipe. And I think for years and years, they've been hearing, don't get rid of the stories. Don't tell me how your grandmother made that 25 years ago and now you're making that recipe. And they started to take that kind of content out of it because their audience just wanted them to get to the recipe. But I think that makes them like every other food blogger that's out there. The ones that are telling the stories, their audience is connecting to them. If someone is saying, I just want the recipe, that's not your person. And I think we have to be okay with that. We're writing for the people that we want for them to continue to come back because you share those stories about how you cooked with your grandmother 25 years ago. So it, like you're saying, it sets them apart from everyone else that's out there.
Yeah, and stories are such a fast and simple and impactful way to connect with people emotionally because stories are always it's like a common ground. It's like if I tell you about my grandma, it's like you think, you know what? That's just like my Auntie Flo. She did that, and all of a sudden now we have this connection, and it's emotional.
And they're going to be more likely to continue to read your content, to buy anything that you're offering. You put together a cookbook of your grandmother's 25 best recipes, and all of a sudden, those people are going to be more likely to buy it than someone that complained about the fact that I just want the recipe. It's just writing for the right audience and not for simple page views that bloggers have continually been trying to chase.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of SEO over the years, so I get it, like finding those keywords and phrases. But when I talk about this with others and sometimes teach a bit about that, I say, look, maybe a third or a quarter of your pages, you'll find really good keywords, key phrases for them. Go for it. But there'll be other page topics where you think, you know what, there isn't a strong keyword or phrase for this. So you don't dump it. You say, okay, I'm going to do something different with this. I'm going to weave in story. I'm going to make this more shareable. I'm going to attach this with a short video so that it can go on Instagram or TikTok. So yes, use SEO as and where appropriate. But there'll always be pages that you cannot rank well for on Google, but you can do well in terms of shareability and just engaging with the audience. So again, the other thing about if I'm using AI too much and I'm hiding, then that kind of robotic sameness comes through. I am actually kind of coming out more from behind the curtain than I used to. I'm doing more video work. I'm sharing more moments from my own life so that I am a person. I'm Nick, not to be confused with ChatGPT. So I think there's something there as well. And I'm doing it with my own work and like promoting my own stuff, but I'm also doing it on my sites, topic sites like coffee, is I'm stepping out so people feel the person and not just the AI generated text.
Yes. I think that this is one of the reasons that I often talk a lot about YouTube and podcasts. I talk about you have to get in front of your audience so that they know who you are and they're going to connect to a voice. They're going to connect to your mannerisms through a podcast. And they're obviously going to do the same through YouTube, even more so. So if you're comfortable with video content, it speeds up the process of that like no trust factor with your audience.
I have a tip on getting comfortable with video.
I'd love it.
I did some videos and somebody said, "Oh, Nick, you're so lucky. Like you're just talking to the camera like you're talking to me." And I just laughed and laughed because that was, I think it was the first video I put up on YouTube because I wanted to get out there. I said, "You know how many takes that was? I did that like 100 times. I was so bad. I was so uncomfortable. I was so certain I could never do it." And if you want to be okay with that, just work it. It's the grind. You just have to go like again and again and again and again, and eventually you'll get there. So no, it's not just video. Isn't just something for a few people who are comfortable. It's for all of us, so long as we put in the time and effort and don't mind doing it really badly 100 times.
Yes, it goes back to practice makes perfect, right? We all grew up listening to our parents tell us that. I can remember my dad's, I was a basketball player, and it was always get outside and shoot your foul shots. You got to continually shoot them. The more you shoot, the better you're going to get at it.
Yeah.
And it killed me, but he was right. And it's everything in life is very much like that. Plus, once you pull off that Band-Aid and take that first leap forward of testing it, you're not as uncomfortable the next time.
Right.
Or the next time after that. It's just working at it and getting more comfortable with it.
And also, again, if you're imperfect, which we always are, that's great because to be imperfect is to be human.
Yeah.
And it is not an AI thing. Like AI makes mistakes, but it's usually like hallucinating or just getting facts straight wrong. But for us, if I stumble or I stutter, then that's okay. That's what humans do. So people are forgiving. So don't freak out if you're doing video or if indeed you're doing writing or audio or anything. And it's imperfect because people connect with that because they're imperfect too.
Yes. I will say that from the very beginning, this podcast, your episode 391. So we are
Congratulations.
7 years old at this point for a podcast. And from the very beginning, I said, do not take out my ums, do not take out my hesitations. That is how I speak. And that's how I'm going to coach someone or how I'm going to teach someone in a live session. So I want that in there because like you said, it does make me imperfect and it makes it easier to connect and you know what you're going to get because you're hearing it over and over in your ears on a podcast.
Right.
Nick, you actually are offering my audience the Copywriter's Guide to Writing Better AI Prompts. Can you tell us a little about what they can expect to learn from that?
So writing prompts is, I'm learning new stuff all the time. So this introduction, this short guide is just like dozens of examples of prompts to get you started. So, there are some for email, there are some for blog posts, there are some for newsletters, there are some even for like things like white papers and speeches. So it's kind of a starter pack. It is if you're not familiar with writing prompts, then yeah, just refer to that and it'll get you started. Beyond that, once you've got more comfortable going back and forth, really get into that mindset that we were talking about of assistant to collaborator. And you don't just do the prompt and then there's the output and like it or not like it. You go, but you're having a conversation with your collaborator saying, hey, yeah, but can you take out the part about X and can you make the whole thing feel a little more conversational? And it will. And then you'll say, hey, dude, bit too much on the conversation, dial it back a bit. And it'll give you another draft dialed back a bit. And I used to feel uncomfortable, like, am I going to upset this thing asking for 10 different drafts? Because if it was a real writer, they would get upset with me for asking 10 drafts. But of course it doesn't. You can keep going and going. So prompting is not kind of a one-shot deal. You start off with a prompt and then you can go back and forth and back and forth. And sometimes I will defer to my collaborator. I'll say, hey, what do you think I'm missing here? And that can blow your mind because sometimes it'll come back with stuff that you've missed and you think, wow, how could I not have thought of that? And now all of a sudden that collaboration becomes very real.
Right.
Because it's not just this static kind of tool like a hammer you're working with. It's something that can actually improve the final output that you create.
Excellent. We are going to link to that in the show notes. And as my listeners know, you can always send me a DM on Instagram and I can send that link directly to you as well. Nick, I appreciate you so much for taking the time to speak with me and my audience. Where's the best place for them to connect with you if they have future questions?
Basically, just go to Nick Usborne. So that's NICKUSBORNE.com. And my blog's there, my courses are there, my socials are there, my email, contact, everything is there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
I don't know about all of you, but throughout this conversation, I had so many different mindset shifts around the idea of AI and looking at it as more of a collaborator rather than a machine that I'm simply going to feed information to and just it's going to spit it back out. But actually having that opportunity to collaborate and have a conversation so that I can help my brainstorming efforts to get my content out there quicker and in a more succinct way is definitely something that I need in my life. So if you haven't already gone and grabbed Nick's Copywriter's Guide to Writing Better AI Prompts, you need to make sure that you go and do that. You can send me a DM on Instagram at Jenny_Melrose and I will send it directly to you. Or you can click the link right in your favorite podcasting app and it will take you directly to the blog post that has it there. I appreciate you all so much for listening in. As always, I will see you all next time.